Hello YouTube, my name is Rafi Khan, this is my channel RK Loves Novels, and today I'm going to be doing a no spoiler review on James and the Trees, both by Percival Everett, who I must say, ever since I discovered him a few months ago, he's to definitely become one of my favourite authors, actually he is either one of my favourite authors, or the favourite author, sorry, got that messed up there. Anyways, so I'm gonna just tell you a bit about Percival Everett first, from the front of this book, James. And Percival Everett is the author of over 30 books. I think it's around 70. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, somewhere around that. He's the author of 30 books, including Telephone, Doctor No, which I will be reading soon. It's on my TBR, and The Trees, which was shortlisted for the 2022 Booker Prize and won the 2022 Bollinger Everyman Wodehouse Prize, and Erasure, I haven't read that, which was adapted into the major Oscar-winning film American Fiction. He has received the Hurston-Wright Legacy Award and the PEN Center USA Award for Fiction, has been a Pulitzer Prize finalist, and is Distinguished Professor of English at the University of Southern California. An instant New York Times and Sunday Times bestseller in hardback, James was a finalist for the 2024 Orwell Prize for Fiction, which was shortlisted for the 2024 Booker Prize and was named the winner of the 2024 National Book Award for Fiction and the 2025 Andrew Carnegie Medal for Excellence in Fiction. And Everett himself lives in Los Angeles. So, yeah, this book, after reading this book, it definitely deserves some awards. Like, criminal if it didn't. Now I'm going to read you the blurb of James as well. And the first line is actually a quote from the book. "With my pencil, I wrote myself into being." The Mississippi River, 1861. When the enslaved Jim overhears that he's about to be sold to a new owner in New Orleans and separated from his wife and daughter forever, he flees to nearby Jackson Islands until he can formulate a plan. Meanwhile, Huck Finn has faked his own death to escape his violent father, who recently returned to town. So begins a dangerous and transcendent journey along the Mississippi River towards the elusive promise of the Free States and beyond. As James and Huck navigate the treacherous waters, each bend in the river holds the promise of both salvation and demise, and together the unlikely pair embark on the most life-changing odyssey of them all. And I'm just going to quickly tell you some of the quotes that people have said about James. Anne Patchett says, "Who should read this book? Every single person in the country." The Daily Telegraph say, "Playful and viciously comic. James might be Book of the Year and ought to have won the Booker Prize." And probably one of my favourite quotes is from Roddy Doyle, the author, saying, "Truly extraordinary books are rare, and this is one of them." I totally agree with Doyle because this is extraordinary. I read it all in one sitting. I couldn't put it down, and it just really made me fit. I don't know how to explain this, but before I read James and the Trees, I obviously knew about slavery, and I also obviously knew about lynching and Emmett Till, but until I read these books, I just never really thought about them in detail. To me, they're just another event in the history, but now they just feel more significant to me, if that makes sense. Now I think about it more, and what African Americans went through, and any other unwhites went through in America and even England and pretty much every single white country in the world, what they went through, and it just really it provoked me to just take a moment and think about my history and be grateful for the world we've got. Yeah. Oh, and what I also really liked about Everett's work is that he includes so much comedy in each of his texts, especially The Trees, which I'm now going to read you the blurb and quotes and stuff. So, when the rural town of Money, Mississippi is beset by a series of brutal murders, a pair of detectives from the Mississippi Bureau of Investigation arrive, only to be met with resistance from the local sheriff, his deputy, the coroner, and a mob of racist white townsfolk. This, they expect, less predictable. However, there's a second corpse, which appears at each crime scene, that of a man resembling Emmett Till, the young black boy lynched in the same town 65 years earlier. As the spate of copycat killings spreads across the country, What begins as a murder investigation soon becomes a journey into the soul of America's violent past. Okay, so that's that, and now I'm going to read you some of the quotes. The Guardian have said that the genius of this novel is that in an age of reactionary populism, it goes on the offensive, using popular forms to address a deep political issue as page-turning comic horror. The New York Times has said Everett has mastered the movement between unspeakable terror and knockout comedy. And Nadifa Mohammed says, you don't read him for a straight novel, you read him for a trip around his weird and wonderful mind, which I think explains Everett perfectly. Like, I don't know what goes on in that mind, but I never would have thought to write a book like this, even if I was a genius. And it's just so brilliant. Like, as I read this in 2 sittings, but that was probably only because it was late at night and I wanted to go to bed. So anyways, I'm now going to talk about comedy in both of these books, and yeah. So, obviously, for me, I think if it was just a book about injustice and stuff, if just going on and on and on about the same thing, I think I'll get bored after a while. But the way Everett puts it, with the use of comedy, especially in The Trees, where it's just like back and forth conversations with characters, it just makes it comedical. The way they speak to each other, even in parts in this when it's just so much comedy takes place in this, and interactions with the King and Duke in James, him and Huck interacting with the King and Duke, it just makes it easier to read and it makes it so much more enjoyable, if that's the way to put it across. And yeah, as Bonnie Garmer says, pure brilliance. And I agree, it was pure brilliance. I really loved this. And it's probably one of my favourite books of all time, as is this. And I'm definitely reading Dr. No, which is, as I mentioned, it's on my TBR. So now I'm just going to move on to the plots of both books and start rating it. So I've got it written down on a piece of paper so I didn't forget. Okay. So, for plots, rating out of 10. For James, I had to go 8. I'm going for 8 out of 10. I mean, as I said, it's very, very good. But because I forgot to mention Sally, didn't I? But, sorry. But this is actually a retelling of The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain. So this is obviously I haven't read, well I have now, but before I read this, I hadn't read Huckleberry Finn, so I didn't really get the plot, because I hadn't read it, because this is a retelling of Twain's classic. And so that's the only reason why I put 8 out of 10, if that makes sense. And Trees, 10 out of 10. I just loved it so much, and it was just so interesting, and it was like teaching me about racial injustice, but at the same time, just making me laugh. And at the same time, it had parts of my favourite genre, murder mystery. So all of that, it just made this a really enjoyable book, and the perfect book to read in November. And side plots for James, which is obviously the Huck Finn part of the story. That was, what did I rate that? 8 out of 10. Because once again, I hadn't read Huckleberry Finn, but at the same time, it was bloody brilliant. I couldn't put it down. Just learning about Huck, his relationship with his father, his relationship with Tom Sawyer, his relationship with Miss Watson and the judge. And it was powerful. It showed us a pure image of Southern American childhood in those days. And the subplot for The Trees, 9 out of 10, which is obviously, I'm a bit conflicted between what the side plot for this is, but I'm saying it's Mama Z and her history side plot, and that's 9 out of 10, which only isn't 10 out of 10 because I'm not really a big fan of Mama Z. She creeps me out a bit, but I'm not going to spoil anything because I want you to read the book, and if you've already read this book, you will know what I mean. Okay, now for characters, it's an easy one. 1,000 out of 10 for both, because like James, Huck, Morris, Buck, King, Duke, all these fantastic characters we met in James, they really help impact powerful meaning to the story, as well as adding comedic bits to make it easy to read. and it just taught me a lot about history, and yeah, that's all I got to say about it really. But apart from the fact, I just really enjoyed this book, and I really think you should read it if you're into these kind of things, especially with a bit of comedy. It's just perfect. And The Trees, same thing there. It'll teach you about lynchings and more recent American violence, whilst James, but it's a bit of more further back. But both of these books are so brilliant, and compliments to Everett, because I can never write something like this, and it's, as Anne Patchett says, who should read this book? Every single person in the country. This is for everybody. This is significant, it's important, and it's changed my perspective on life, my perspective on American racial injustice, especially in the South, because I learned a bit about it in GCSE and A-level history. So anyways, I'm about to tell you my favourite characters from each book without spoiling it. Save the Trees, my favourite character was Ed. He was one of the detectives from the Bureau of Investigation. He's African American himself, and he receives a bit of suspicion from the sheriff and the deputies, and that makes his job entirely more difficult. But he's just so comedic. The way he interacts with his partner Jim, and that other lady whose name I've forgotten, but she's very significant because she's from the FBI, and it's a really peculiar name. Yes, and the way he just goes around solving the murder, the way he talks to people, the way he like, you know, he's himself. And my favourite character in James is James, because it's just so, his journey is so powerful. It impacted me. Like, for 5 or 10 minutes after I finished this book, I just sat on my bed and just processed processed his narrative, and it was like I had to think for a minute because it was just, the book was just so spectacular and it was so enjoyable, and James made it so much better thanks to Everett. Now, would I recommend these books? Hell yeah. Like, these two are such great books. I'd recommend all of Percival Everett's books, even though I haven't read all of them. But if this is the level he's coming out with right now, then all his books must be superb. And would I read more Everett novels? Well, yes, as I've already mentioned a couple of times, Dr. No is on my TBR list, and I'll definitely be getting to that soon. So, thank you ever so much for watching, guys. I know it was the review is not at much good of a level, and you could just go watch it elsewhere, but this is actually my second ever review, and if you could take the chance to subscribe and like and comment and share and help me build my channel so I could, and sorry. So, my apologies there, accidentally cut off, but what I was trying to say is please subscribe and share so I can build my channel and grow. And I've got some more reviews coming up soon, probably The Great Gatsby, which I'm currently reading right now, and I also want to review the Before the Coffee Gets Cold series, which I absolutely enjoyed, probably one of my favourite series of all time. And obviously I want to rank The Hunger Games as well, so that's another video idea. So anyways, please like and subscribe, and I know I've already said that, but thank you so much for watching it this far, and I'll see you guys later. Bye!